The Lost Letter of Abner Brugemald. For 3 days now I've been alone with the beast. I rather doubt that I shall see a fourth. After the storm, when our ship was wrecked against that strange tower, I thought that the sharks which chased us as we swam for the shore were the worst of our fates. By Bubble and Brew, I was wrong. The horrible thing struck first at night, tearing up out of the earth where we first made camp, inside the tree line. It was my watch, and my failure. I never even heard poor Ulmo scream over the roaring geyser of dirt, but when it horked down Danad, he cried out for his mother and her muffins. The hard carapace of that great hungry thing blunted our spears and shook off our sling stones. The land shark dove back down, popping up only long enough to devour Keithree's legs before we made for the trees. The whole rest of the night we could hear it, swimming through the earth like it were water. Now and then it would fell a tree. Twice its luck won out and ours failed. Lida and Nebin never saw dawn. The remainder of our company were likewise consumed. Some I saw plunge into the midnight of that insatiate maw. But eventually I stopped watching, covered my ears, and resolved to wait my turn. But the awful creature has delayed, in my case. Perrin insisted its proper name was pronounced Boulay, but I don't believe him, and anyway, he's et. I am 5 days up this tree without cakes or ale, no weed for my pipe, no friends left to sing songs with. I am resolved to take my last empty bottle of stout, with this letter stuffed in it, and to run for the shore. If my legs carry me fast enough, perhaps I may deliver this message to the sea, and if I am very lucky, to drown before I am eaten. If by luck or circumstance this letter is read, take warning, stranger. Never come to the Isle of Dread. No quest on earth could be worth a journey to this hateful place. Not even the tankard of St. Wenta.
In the city of Greyhawk, 5 individuals are united by circumstance. A brewer priest, a haunted swordsman, a living relic, a caustic criminal, and a golem without a past. With the drawing of a single card, their lives have been turned upside down. Welcome to The Chimera, a role-playing adventure podcast. Our campaign this season is called Misplaced. It takes place in the venerable setting of Greyhawk, kind of, and we're playing with a modified version of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Vin LeBate, and I play Golden Hydrakashi, a Dragonborn rogue. Joining me today are...
I'm Braden Lamb, and I'm playing Balmo, a halfling cleric.
I'm Jeffrey Bard, and I play Sarsimian, the human sword mage.
I'm Josh Halbachner, and I play Ashlar, a warforged sorcerer.
I'm Kacey Smith, and I play Latchkey, a shardmind with the dual classes of Battlemind and Scion.
And I'm Kelly Weissman Asprooth Jackson, the Dungeon Master.
Now, let's get started.
When last we left the Intrepid Team Cube, they had just finished killing Obliviax, the memory-based moss monster. So as a reminder of where you all are, you are inside the Princess, which is a strange, bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, cube floating in space, with very Spartan decor and extremely unusual, either very magical or something else was weird going on, structures inside of it. The light here is bright, but still somehow kind of off in a disconcerting way. The lack of ambient sound in most rooms and any sort of background smell is somewhat disturbing, although now this is the one other area where you've encountered organic life that wasn't behind some kind of a force field, so the ambient smell issue is less prevalent here. You're in the holding cell area, which has 8 cells around the exterior of the room, several of which have been emptied now, but a few of which still contain occupants. There are still several doorways that you have not explored. And so I want to remind you of that and give you the opportunity to do so. And I will say our goal for this episode is to finish an initial exploration of the cube because time has continued to pass, of course, and we are approaching the point at which it will start to become questionable. Does this group care about reconnecting with Rakashi or not? It's okay if your answer is no, you have free will, but we're sort of creeping up on that inflection point. There comes a point at which you spend so much time in here, you're just sort of giving up on whatever's going on with Rakashi on the outside. So I believe when we left off, Sarsimian was scraping up a little bit of the sludge of Obliviax into some sort of a container, and Latchkey had just acquired a shiny new sword.
So shiny.
You were saying something, Braden?
Yeah, I couldn't remember what kind of time frame we gave for meeting back up with Rakashi.
I don't think we gave any time frame. Out of character,
We just left.
Rakashi gave herself 3 days to hang around before she ditched us. And I don't remember how much of that time we've used.
I don't think we'll ever know.
But especially as you have now overcome a major threat inside the cube, and there isn't a lot else, I mean, barring whatever you might find in the other unexplored spaces, not a lot else going on in terms of like immediate danger or problems you need to solve. It's getting to be about time to think about going back out once you've finished clearing the cube.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's there's no sense that like we couldn't kind of take a minute to at least get a sense of what else is in the areas we explicitly haven't looked at.
No, I'm not trying to push you past that. I'm just sort of trying to say my goal for this episode is to get to the point of being able to either say, and now we're going to go back out and check in on Rakashi, or we're going to decide to pursue some of the deeper avenues of exploration that the cube presents, and we're just going to ignore Rakashi and we don't care what happens to her.
Well, obviously we do care about Rakashi and what happens to her.
Yeah, she can spider climb.
But last we saw outside the cube, it was chaos.
That is also true.
And presumably chaos has died down. Maybe Latchkey, you're kind of the teleportiest. Maybe you want to take a peek outside?
Princess, is there a way to see outside of the cube to the area that brought us here?
That function is not available in this room.
But it's something that's available within the cube itself?
Correct.
What room would we need?
That function is available in the transportation chamber.
Okay.
Oh.
Princess, there are 8 rooms in the Princess? Ash kind of stumbles at the end there as he realizes the ludicrous nature of the way that question had to be phrased.
There are 8 rooms in the Princess. And just to make sure we're all aware, you have seen 6 of them.
Yes.
We kind of know where to go.
So, yeah, I propose that we take a moment, check out the 2 areas that we've not yet visited, and then go formulate a plan for leaving based on what we can find out in the transportation chamber.
Agreed.
So are the 2 that we haven't seen, one is off to the right of the specimen making room?
I had a lot of notes, but they all went away.
Yeah.
If you look at the map in Roll20, which you can cruise around in and see stuff, you will see that there are several doors you haven't gone through. You may or may not be able to make educated guesses about where some of them lead. I mean, there are 2 that, based on what you can see on the revealed map, I think it's pretty obvious they connect to each other, right? Like, it's a couple of places where it's like, well, it seems like that's a hallway. But the rest of them, I'm not making guarantees that when you go through door A, it's going to connect to an obvious place on the map, because this place is spatially weird.
Okay.
So in this room particularly, there's 2 ways in or in and out. You came in through one. There's another one you could check, or you could go back the way you came.
The north door from the green field room. Did we go through that?
That's where we entered.
Yes.
That was from the specimen room.
That connects to the door on the right side of the specimen room.
There was like a series of hallways that we went down to get there.
Yeah, essentially, if you look at the map, this is just difficult to represent visually, and I don't have the artistic ability / the facility of this map making software is limited. The door that leaves the right side of the specimen chamber connects immediately to that hallway at the top of the room where the actual creatures arrive, right? There's
So like that?
Yeah, there's no missing space there, right? On the map, it appears divided, but in reality, those two things lead directly into each other.
This is very familiar from my Zork days. Okay, great. And there were no doors off of Callista's chambers. The only way in and out was through the elevator.
Correct.
Right.
That we know of.
That there was no other apparent way in or out. I guess you didn't do like a very detailed, explicit looking for secret compartments or anything, but you did. I mean, you searched the place pretty thoroughly.
There were no doors.
There were absolutely no doors. Yes.
Yeah, let's head, big quotey fingers here, south from here. Then there's one door to this room we haven't used. So
Okay, you go south.
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Let me.
As we're leaving, Balmo kicks the remains of Obliviax and looks at the tentacle-faced guy in the tank and says, "Happy now?"
No, I'm still in this tank.
Well, I did what I could.
You go through the door. Okay, I gotta zero in a little bit more so I can.
What's IM doing, by the way?
IM was on its way out of the room until you killed Obliviax, and now it's just kind of chilling. Okay. So if you scroll up to the top left-hand side of the map, you will see that going south through that exit took you back to the transportation chamber.
Okay, are there any doors in here that we haven't gone through?
Both of the side doors.
Yeah, we only went through the south door, right?
So there's 4 exits, and you left through one. You've now come back in through. You left through the south exit. You've now come back in through the north entrance exit, and there's both an east and a west.
Let's go west.
Sure.
Going west takes you up some steps through another door and back into that chamber where the shark normality is.
Okay, so now in this room, we know where all 3 exits lead to.
Yes, you've now used all the doors in this room.
Okay,
It folds like a 6-sided die.
right? Yeah, because it's a cube.
Except for the elevator. That's the only thing that's weird.
Should we go back into the transportation room and out the other door?
I think we should go to the energy room and then go east.
I mean, west?
Okay,
Or west, sorry.
so just a straight shot.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you keep moving west through the reactor chamber and into whatever is west, quote unquote, of the reactor chamber.
You know, with all the energy tubes and the meat flour and the things in jars, this is like Metroid on a Pac-Man map.
That's an interesting comparison. Okay. In this room, the room to the west of the reactor chamber, the space is again about the same size as most of the other rooms are. A few of them have been smaller, but this is sort of the kind of maximal standard size. The white kind of blankness, the wall, floors, and ceiling is similar. The overhead lights here are a quarter, maybe a fifth as bright. It's much less light in here from overhead. They're not quite off, but they're dim.
Dimmer than the meat flour room, or?
Yes, a little dimmer than the meat flour room. But there's additional light beyond the stuff from overhead, which is partially making up for that. So you will see there's several different columns. There are 3 kind of large columns down the middle of the room. There are 4 smaller columns kind of to the sides of those in a square. And then there are 2 very long kind of additional walls in this room. They don't close off any whole section of the room, but they run parallel to each other most of the length of the room, pretty far apart, past it, with all those 7 different columns in between them. And all of this stuff, all the columns and these 2 partial walls have images playing across them. Essentially, they're video screens. That is what they are from a outsider point of view. From your character's point of view, it's a very odd experience to see 2-dimensional but otherwise perfectly accurate visual representations of other spaces and times, which this clearly is. Like they're all, almost all of them, outdoor images. Most of them occur in daylight, so there's a lot of brightness coming off of the pillar or the wall. There are windows around the outside walls. Windows, I say. They're like blocks of this same sort of scrolling visual representations along the outside of the wall. So there's dozens and dozens of different scenes being played out simultaneously on these various surfaces.
Do they seem to be repeating or just ongoing?
So it's a pretty bewildering amount of information, especially because the lights are low, and it is really something that your characters, for the most part, very high-level magic could do this as a one-off, but a whole room full of things like this, definitely none of your characters have any direct experience that's relevant to it. And it's pretty startling to see for the first time. But sort of walking amongst the pillars, walking around the walls, yes, you can see there's a whole bunch of different images here. And if you wait around long enough, you will eventually start to see them repeat. Some of them are only maybe under a minute long. Some of them are much longer. And so you'll notice repetition in some of them long before there's any evidence. It's even been possible to see whether any of them, some of the other ones are looping. And what the images are generally of is of various elaborate wildlife. So there's imagery of a froghemoth coming up out of the water and flailing its tentacles and bellowing. These are all silent. There's no sound accompanying them. There's imagery of white owl bears playing. The stump monster that you encountered earlier with Yibdob, that creature is on display here. It's sort of like, again, I'm going to make a reference that's not relevant to your characters, but really relevant to you. It's like nature footage, right? It's like images of various animals just being animals in the wild. The Vegapygmies are here to be certain. The Chul and the Acharai, who are also in the holding cells, the giant bird and the sort of lobster monsters, they're here.
Are they on separate screens?
They are, yes. These are, again, basically all of this is stuff that's taken outside, mostly in a jungle setting, occasionally other settings. Sometimes, for Latchkey, you would notice this. Sometimes you can see bits and pieces of the elaborate paving stone work and the grassy fields that Latchkey had seen in that flashback.
Okay.
So that some of the footage may have been taken in the area immediately around the cube. Walking around and kind of looking around, there are also some things you haven't seen before here. There's something like a giant burrowing shark with legs bursting up through the earth.
Bomo shudders at that and doesn't quite know why.
There's something that at least one of you will recognize as an Umber Hulk. A variety of other strange and interesting creatures. There's at least one piece of imagery it's on a pretty short loop, so it doesn't take too long to watch happen. But it's noteworthy because it's in a very different space than most of the other stuff is. It appears to be at night, or at least a sky full of stars is the background of it. And there is a figure in one of those silver suits with the golden helms walking on a flat expanse of kind of like white dust. And the figure walks along, and as the figure is in mid-stride, the image stops, and it moves in closer and closer and closer, like you're focusing your eyes on something in particular, until it gets to the picture focuses and focuses and focuses, so that a small part of it gets larger and larger. So you see the bottom of the boot that this figure is wearing. Oh, they're in mid-stride, and one of their boots is sort of up. You can see the bottom of the boot, and on the bottom of the boot, there's some kind of like a green mold or moss or something.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that's playing out on the walls and columns.
Princess, what is this room?
This is the display gallery.
I'm getting a slightly closer look at one of those suits. There's no obvious distinguishing marks or writing or anything.
Definitely no writing. Again, there's some evidence of some kind of a connection between the helmet and the body of the suit. And this one also has one of those sort of canister backpack things on its back. So you can get a better look at that. So that has like straps that go around the suit. And this is remember the first one of these you saw had something like this, had some sort of a thing on its back. You didn't get a good look at it. But here you can see that it's some kind of like a glass tank with metal fittings. And in that tank, there's a whole, just a constantly burning bright fire.
But there's nothing that we can look at on this and distinguish this in particular from a different person in one of these suits.
No, there's no kind of labeling or identifying features like that.
Princess, what is depicted on this screen? I shouldn't say screen, because that's not a... Princess, what's in this window?
And you're referring to the one with the silver suit?
The one with the suit and the green chewing gum on the shoe.
I'm sorry, I can't see what you're pointing to.
This one. He taps it physically with his finger.
Please do not tap on the displays.
Ash is gonna. Which one is this within the visual space here?
I'm gonna say it's this side of this column where I've just moved Ash to.
Okay. So given the symmetry of the room, it should be possible to come up with a way to describe that has only two possible options.
Okay.
So it's the right or the leftmost of the small columns while facing the large wall, and then it's X up or down from the bottom.
Okay, so it is the leftmost of the small columns while facing the large wall. Fill in the X.
Well, I don't know how many screens there are vertically on this, or how many windows, I guess.
Oh no, in general, these are all sort of one image per side.
Oh, okay. I thought that they were like stacked. Okay, then yeah, then just that that specification I just gave, the one of those two which is further from the door to the reactor chamber. There we go.
Now ask it in character.
Yes.
Princess, I am looking at the screen. Sorry, not the screen. I am looking at a small pillar. Where I stand, if I face the large wall here, my back is to one side of this pillar, and my right hand will point towards where the door to the reactor chamber is. What is on the screen behind my back? And he's going to kind of stand here with the one hand up and the other hand pointing right over at the door while he waits for his answer.
Okay, I actually think that you misdescribed that, but I'm not actually trying to be a dick. Because I think it would be your left hand then, right? If you're not facing... Anyway, let's not worry about it. I accept that you've worked hard enough on this. That image is of the accidental collection of the spores of Obliviax.
Who was Princess. Who was Obliviax collected by?
Callista.
That's what I thought.
What? Why did you think that, Ash?
Well, we can draw a reasonable conclusion that the individuals in these strange suits that we've seen are in fact members of the Chimera Project, given that we've seen strange, unusual uniforms in the quarters here, and none of these things look like anything we've ever seen before. And Obliviax did make a point of calling out Callista by name.
So was that Callista we saw flying around outside the cube?
Could have been.
As this space is abandoned, we suspect it was a different member.
Anything else you want to do in this room?
No, I want to see what's left.
Balmo sidles up to the land shark and jabs his finger on that screen and says, "What's this one?"
Please do not touch the displays.
He sighs. Okay, hold on. Princess, can you get I Am to follow us in here?
Paging I Am. Eventually, probably after more time than is necessary, I Am arrives.
Hey there. You've got something like eyes, right? What's that? He jabs his finger at the screen again.
Good solution. I Am goes over to the particular display and observes it with its one eye and says, "That is a boulet, or land shark."
Do you know where this image came from?
I assume somewhere on the island, almost all of these images were collected in the environs around the princess.
Balmo turns a little bit pale and, after a pause, just says, "Okay."
What about the collection of the spores of Obliviax? Was that an environ near the princess?
No. Obliviax is from one of the hateful stars.
And what are those?
The stars that hate the earth. I Am uses a few of its several hands to point sort of up.
And I Am says earth, not orth, right?
Oh, sorry. No, he says orth.
Okay.
Everybody says orth. That's just me slipping up.
Okay. Are there many of those?
I believe that the Chimera Project was involved in cataloging them. I don't believe that work was completed.
So, yes.
Pretty hard to get to one of those hateful stars, huh?
It is difficult, as I understand it. That's what the Star Harbor is for.
Oh.
So the Star Harbor makes it easier to get to the stars. The hateful stars. Any other stars? Are there, like, nice stars?
Most of the stars do not hate Orth.
Are there any you'd recommend?
I have not been.
All right. This is very, very strange.
So this room has two other exits besides the one you came in through. There's one in the northeast sort of corner, and there's one on the western wall.
Well, I think we can infer that the northeast one goes back to the specimen chamber, seeing as some of those specimens are representative of the images in these windows. I guess that just leaves the east door. Shall we onward?
Yeah.
Sure.
Please.
Or western door?
Western door.
Yeah,
You
western
came in
door.
through the eastern door.
Right.
I do the same thing, Braid.
Okay, so you go out through the door opposite where you came in, basically, and that takes you
That's it.
back to the transportation chamber.
Okay,
Oh.
so now we know where all the doors in the transportation chamber go. Is that correct? Or is there
That is
another one?
correct. Nope, you
Okay.
know there are 4 doors out of the transportation chamber. You have been through all of them now. You've explored all of those possibilities.
So what are the rooms where we have missing or doors we haven't been through yet?
We haven't been through the north door in the room we were just in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you haven't been down the stairs by the elevator.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, let's do that.
That's my bad. I thought that down the stairs was to the elevator.
Oh.
No, the map, unfortunately, because it's overhead, is a little confusing. I apologize for that. The elevator is basically...
and then the elevator's in the...
In between, yeah.
Hmm.
So, you're going to go through any of a number of various routes back to the reactor chamber and then down one of the staircases into wherever that leads, right? Okay. A second, I have to open up a new section of the map. Okay.
Oh my god.
Oh, is that a sculpture?
Oh dear.
I needed an image to be a stand-in for the image of Callista, so I just went with Princess Peach.
Shouldn't it be a toadstool saying your princess is in another castle?
And she is.
And she is.
So, basically the staircases, they come down to a landing about halfway up in the height of the room, and then from the landing, 2 more staircases depart down away from each other to get you all the way down to the floor of this room. This is another large open room. The floor around, so it's a large open room. The lighting is the same, but the floor here is different. It's all tile. Still a white tile, so still relatively nondescript, but it's a different material than throughout the rest of the building. Maybe a little bit more, it seems a little bit, it's just a harder surface. Basically, the northern third of this room is where all the staircase stuff is going on. And then there is a literal line on the floor, a big red line. And then past that, there is a image worked into the tile of the floor. So I guess it's sort of a mosaic image, although it's in organized pieces of tile. That's again that same princess card of Callista, right? So it's just the same image of the card with Callista appearing as the Princess of Nyrond with the numbers, the numerical value, which is 4 for the princess. That's on the floor. It's printed on the floor of the room. And there are 12 statues, 6 on either side of her, that have all been destroyed. I mean, they're so badly wrecked that you can barely tell. Like you can see like the occasional arm or something that suggests, okay, these are statues that were just someone went to town on messing up. There are statues, but there appear to be things printed on the bases of them. If you go inspect that, you might be able to get some information off of the bases of the 12 statues. And then at the south end of the room, there's no door, there's no like aperture. Instead, there's just a really big opening. And at the really big opening, beyond that, there's some kind of like a dark, almost looks like a tunnel or something. The floor gives way. And the ceiling, there's something beyond that which is larger apparently in every direction than the already very large aperture and is not well lit. But above that, I can't really show you it on the map because we have an overhead view. But basically so you look at this room and you look at the southern end, you can see that like most of the southern wall is gone, but there's a fair amount of space on either side, right? Well, that space sort of goes all the way around. There's basically a big arch. And up above that arch, there is another one of these sort of glowing display panel type things, except that it's static. It's not a moving image, and it's not like a crystal clear image of something you would see with your eyes, like some kind of recording of real life events. It's just displaying this static image, which I'm going to upload to the Slack. Just a second here. So basically, it's a sequence of 6 numbers from, one more time. It's a sequence of 7 numbers. There we go. From 3 to 9 that are connected with various lines between them. Oh, and I'm sorry. There were 14 statues, not 12. Gosh, I'm bad at keeping track of those numbers. 2 rows of 7 is the point with the statues. And the light, the number 8 here is lit up in a way that the other 6 are not.
Princess, what is this big hole?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean.
I am. What's this big hole?
Do you mean the exit to the rail system?
Sure. Do we have much concept of rail? I guess, yeah, for mining.
Yeah, maybe the most organized dwarves have some kind of rail mining. As was recently discussed in the extremely negative reviews of the new Robin Hood movie, mining in medieval period was nothing like even the like semi-modern mining concepts we have. The point is, even the idea of putting wheels on rails is probably new to y'all. Actually, I take that back. Ash, you have context for this. The idea of some sort of a system of getting things around on rails, that's actually quite familiar from where you came from, right? From Stormreach.
There isn't anything like a rail that's visible through the hole, though. There's just a big dark...
As I said, the floor falls away. So, I mean, if you want to go over there and look, you might see it, but you're all the way over at the end of the room.
To do that, we'd have to cross the red line.
That is true. To do that, you have to cross the red line.
The red line is so scary. Where's our wooden dog?
Oh, it's a real...
You left it on top of the force field.
Dog now. No, it's a spirit dog now.
Did Brayden collect it?
Yeah.
Oh, you collected it.
Yeah, I mean, so Simeon went and collected it, and it's the focus for Bach.
Okay. You could summon Bach and send it over the line.
No, don't do that. That's bad idea.
Is it just like a painted line or a glowing line, or like how ominous is this?
It's the whole thing is in tile, so the tile goes from white to red for that line. It's not glowing.
Oh, that's not nearly as scary.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look over to Balmo. After you.
Balmo looks down at the line, points his stein in the direction of the line, and says, "May we be who our dogs think we are," and summons Bach.
Oh, that's good. That's real good.
All right, so you got Bach. He's a good boy.
I think, yeah, so Bach's going to tread carefully across the line. Go on.
Bach crosses the line of tiles, and the red line of tiles, nothing happens.
Turns around, sits down, wags his tail. All right. Balmo steps forward across the line.
Balmo experiences no change in crossing the line.
Come on, you guys adventurers or not?
I'm going to go up and try to look over the edge then.
Okay. Yeah, it's a big tunnel. It's not really any taller than this room is, but it's a little bit lower. There's probably a good 3-4 feet down from the lip to where there's a floor. And from the light that's coming in from the tunnel itself is not lit, but from the light that's just coming in from this room that you're standing at the edge of, you can see that there is some kind of a single metal rail that runs all the way along the base of the tunnel and occasionally crackles with blue electricity, like lightning stuff.
Okay, I feel like that answers my question. I'll turn around and I'll say, okay, I believe that this is intended to be a mechanism to move larger objects or living beings between these different stations, although how that actually functions in practice is something that might take a little more investigation. If we think that we're done here, I have a set of questions I might want to ask before we depart.
I don't think we're done here. There's a lot more we have to find. There's a lot more to explore, right? I mean, there's the Sky Harbor. There is, pretty much, I don't know.
technically there are many other places on Earth that we have not been yet. Within the self-contained borders of the princess, I feel like we have a fairly strong tactical grasp of what we've engaged with here.
Latchkey is going to look at the plaques on all these destroyed statues.
Yeah.
Sure. So basically there are these circular bases, and then there was like apparently a roughly life-scale humanoid statue on each of these platforms. And like I said, they've all been wrecked, and there are bits and pieces around, but it's not even evident how they fit together. So there's not a lot of obvious hope there in reassembling any of them. But the bases are intact, and the bases all have nameplates on them. Starting from where Latchkey is, the name is, the one that they are right by is Felbert of Rel Juros.
Is that a name we've heard before?
Felbert is one of the names of the people who are members of the Chimera Project.
Okay.
Oh, it was on the list. Okay.
So this is like the full name. You just had the first name of all the members, and this plate gives you the full name of Felbert of Rel Juros.
All right, Balmo's going to go look for Balmo.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Latchkey's just going to walk down and read each of the plaques.
So the line on I'm taking a minute here to put some stuff into the Slack so you have a record of this.
Hooray.
Having been on the opposite side of this, I really appreciate Casey's efforts to notate NPCs and names when they get said, but
yes,
it's definitely better if we provide the spelling ourselves, because
that is true.
Otherwise it gets way off.
And there. Okay. So on the left, beginning from the one that Latchkey was initially standing by, we have Felbert of Rel Juros, Zarian Albhart, Kiugtum, Baron Lum, Yolandi of Selene, Zagig Wygrain, Arnd of Tadon, and then over on the other side, starting the same way and working to the wall, Stephen the Rock, Callista of Nyrond, Father Balmo, Aguareth, Orgnention, Merlind with a Y and a U, and Mordenkainen.
Father Balmo. So it's Balmo from the future. Future Balmo.
What's Balmo's actual father's name?
Barleywayne? Oh, you mean like what is the father of Balmo's name?
Yeah.
Like his
Or
first
is he
name?
Balmo Jr.?
Hold on. I had a name for him.
I feel like this is a reasonable question.
Yeah. I wrote it down somewhere. Balrun.
So it's not also Balmo. So our options remain you or a different unassociated Balmo.
Yeah.
How
Balmo starts sifting through the rubble, trying to find identifiable features.
How common a name is Balmo?
It's not uncommon. I mean, did we go over this before? I think we might have. Balmo rattles off some ancestors. You know, one was there was a Balmo who was a rogue. There was a Balmo who was a ranger. There was a...
is Balmo more like...
Out of character, all my halfling characters have been named Balmo.
All right, one of them was a gnome.
Is Balmo more like Steve in the real world or Steve in Greyhawk?
I think it might not be Steve, but maybe like Derek.
Sure.
Okay, so it's totally feasible then that this is a completely different Balmo.
Yeah, it's not like this is the only Balmo you've ever heard of. Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
There are other Balmos in the world.
So it's disconcerting, but there's actually no particular reason to assume that this refers to him in some way directly.
Except for the fact that it's the Chimera Project.
And also the addition now of Father Balmo.
Right, and we also know that Balmo is associated with the priest card.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So, Brayden, you wanted to sift through the fractured remains, right?
Also,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
while you're describing that, can you give an idea of how these things were destroyed? Like, did somebody take a sledgehammer to them? Were they exploded? Like, it seems to have been done, deliberately. So just an idea of like, how?
So if they were charred or melted, they're stone. If they were charred or melted, that would be a telltale, like, means of means of destruction, and I would note that for you. They're in chunks. I don't really know how you would tell the difference between a sledgehammer versus like exploding from the inside.
Right, but it's broken as opposed to melted or burnt.
Yes.
I guess exploded, they'd be scattered around all over the room.
Yeah.
That's fair. They are not scattered around all over the room. They are, so that would be consistent with being hit with something repeatedly.
So Latchkey is going to ask do you know what happened to the statues?
I do not. I did not know they had been destroyed. I don't come down here.
Mm.
I have a series of questions. First, Princess, are either of you familiar with this? He's going to crack open the door to the crate that he's been hauling around this whole time and dump the obelisk out on the floor.
Vin knows something.
The princess responds, I can't see what you're referring to.
That's fine.
Floats over by the crate, and its eye does that irising smaller, larger again thing. This looks like the control mechanism for the variegated obelisk. Why has it been removed?
What is the variegated obelisk?
The variegated obelisk is part of the Chimera project.
Well, good. I was just going to kind of pause and consider for a second. Switching topics. How would one go about modifying the access list for the princess?
So that's a question for the princess, right?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't address the princess directly, but I'm not trying to be a stickler. I'm just trying to think about if it's going to respond or not. But you're sort of rolling with, you said you were going to ask some questions, so I'm good with it.
I'm 100% okay with having to constantly be reminded to address the princess directly. I feel like Ash is going to be a little stubborn about that. So,
all right. I think there is going to be some confusion just because I had a response there, so there was an interruption in the chain. But if you address the princess directly again and ask the same question,
yes, I'll wait through the silence. I'll kind of look.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tap my foot a little and I'll say, "Princess, what would be required to have someone added to the access list for the princess?"
Authority for the princess access list lies with Callista.
Callista is unavailable.
Princess, can Ordnention override the access list for the princess?
Ordnention does not have that permission.
Princess, did Callista ever mention Sarsimian?
Callista mentioned the name Sarsimian often.
Princess, did Callista give access to Sarsimian?
No one named Sarsimian is on the access list for the princess.
Who is on the access... Princess, who is on the access list for the princess?
The names on the access list for the princess are Callista, Stephen, Balmo, Agorith, Ordnention, Merland, Mordenkainen, Felbert, Zarian Albhart, Keotum, Baron Lum, Yolandia Celine, Zagi Guigrain, and Arn of Tadon.
So just the list.
Yes.
And so that reminds me. Princess, verifying again. Is Balmo currently in the princess?
Balmo is not currently in the princess.
Princess, how are you able to identify, how are you able to identify me as Ordnention?
Each member of the Chimera Project has an item unique to them, which is encoded as their identifier. You possess Ordnention's identifier.
What is Balmo's identifier?
Princess, is a tankard Balmo's identifier?
Is a tankard Balmo's identifier? That is a good question.
Is a drinking vessel.
Balmo's identifier is a crystalline pendant.
Oh, I don't know that one, says Balmo.
What? Princess, what was Callista's identifier?
Callista's identifier is a crystalline necklace.
We are noting a theme here.
Out of character. Remind me of what 5 items Latchkey is made out of?
Latchkey is made out of crystals that were embedded in a sword, a pen, a mirror, a book, and a poison flask.
So none of those were a necklace.
No, but that makes sense because the princess only thinks they're organ engine. So I'm pretty sure it's the pen.
You don't think it was the rings?
Because Latchkey has memories from like before they were formed of this place, and I don't think that has anything to do with the rings. I think that has to do with the crystals that make them.
Okay.
Did his creepy pen that he used on that guy that one time? I guess I didn't see that. So.
Yes, that was. I'm pretty sure that was part of Latchkey.
Oh, that's fucked up. Oh, jeez. Okay.
And Kelly?
Yes.
My memories of Callista, does a crystalline necklace like that ring any bells?
So, when you see Callista, it's in your dreams, right? And they're frequently vivid dreams, but they're still dreams. So they're not like you watched a movie and then you woke up and remember the whole movie. They're like, they're dreams. They're kind of fluid. They're a little bit messy. You wake up with a strong impression about them more than you remember instant-to-instant details. So when you see Callista in your dreams, you see her as you remember her for the most part. Often it's in familiar places, right? Like the dream often takes place in her room at the Sultan's palace, like it's or in a particular courtyard that she enjoyed, or out in the countryside in a place you remember being with her. Or sometimes it's a reuse of some location you've been to recently without her, where then she's present, like the dream you had at the beginning of the game where she was in the marketplace, right? It is entirely possible that you have seen her wearing a crystalline necklace. You've seen her wearing a lot of different things. Some of them were definitely things you saw her wearing in person outside of dreams. Some of them might have been different clothing, but none of it was out of character for her, right? There was never anything like that was so obviously something you had never seen her wear before that it would have struck you that way.
Okay. That was a very good answer.
So after that last piece, Ash is going to kind of address the group. So these last answers were not as optimal as I was hoping for. But nonetheless, I would like to propose the following. As long as we are stuck here, which may wind up being some time, we have the option of roughing it in the jungle on the Isle of Monsters with the monsters. Or we could set up a camp here. It's not optimal that only with Latchkey's assistance can we move in and out, but I don't think for the time being that will be an absolute block. I would like to suggest that we go back to the transport chamber, try to determine what is going on outside the cube. If we can, meet back up with Rakashi. Hopefully she's okay. And then burn every inch of the Scarlet Brotherhood encampment to the ground. And then burn it again for good night. After that, we can take whatever provisions we can gather, either from the jungle or from the remnants of their base, back in here with us, and plan our next moves from a safer environment.
I like this plan.
Yeah. That is tactically reasonable to us.
So then it's agreed. We'll find Rakashi, we'll defeat the Scarlet Brotherhood, and then we'll utilize the technology of the Chimera Project to create a world-spanning mercantile empire. Are we all in?
The first two parts. Yes.
I'm in for all three.
All right.
Latchkey has one last question for the princess. Princess, what is Warren Starcoat in relation to the Chimera Project?
I do not know the name Warren Starcoat.
That just sort of makes Latchkey smirk a little bit.
Did Balmo discover anything among the rubble that would...
Yes. Can you make just a wisdom check for me? So just roll a d20, add your wisdom bonus, and your half your level rounded down to 3.
Ooh, that's where I'm a Viking. 10, 13, 16. You know what? I might do a little Harmony of Arathis on that.
Go right ahead. What does that add?
A +2 to that. So that'd be 18.
So, digging around in the rubble, it's a lot of bits and dust, to be honest with you. But poking around enough in the vicinity of the platform marked Father Balmo, you find what appears to be, it's missing its handle, but there's places where the handle used to attach, a tankard. With some kind of so it's a tankard with a lot of detail on it, and a lot of that detail has been damaged, but part of it is still visible. There was some kind of like a decorative feature. It's a very heavily decorated tankard. Like there was an embellishment on it that looks like, I mean, it's carved stone, obviously, but based on the shapes and the angles, it was probably some kind of a gem or cut glass or crystal that was set into the tankard. And it's hard to tell because part of it's broken, but maybe kind of a sunburst pattern. Like not a circular sunburst, but like an arc sunburst. Coincidentally or not, a little bit similar to the holy symbol of Arathis, which is sort of halfway between that half sunburst and a gear.
Okay.
So yeah. But there was some kind of apparently a tankard in amongst the statuary. Does Balmo share that with everybody else?
Yeah. He holds up a couple of those key pieces and says, "Guys, I'm starting to get a better feeling about finding that tankard. My guess is it looks a little something like this. What this guy is doing with it, I don't know."
All right. Anyone else have any questions, or should we head to the transportation?
Well, before you do that, I'm going to point out that it's actually been a long day for you. So it's probably around the time when you would think about having an extended rest. If you want to press through, that's your choice, but it's sort of...
Oh yeah, no, we did fight a giant monster and a horde of tinier monsters.
Truth.
Let's take a well-earned rest.
Is there anything that anyone wants to explicitly do while you're resting? And then I'm just sort of establishing that it happened before we go on to the transportation room scene.
Lashkey will take a little bit of time to kind of get more familiar with Reason, the sword.
Yep.
See if it will respond when it's addressed by its name. And also just spend some time trying to putting together a ritual and trying to determine if there are any memories that reside within the sword, since it was embedded in Obliviax for so long, presumably for a long time.
Okay. So the first answer is yes. It responds to questions. I mean, it responds to its name. You can address it. It's it communicates mentally.
Yep.
Latchkey is very used to that, so that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Anything in particular you want to ask it?
Who it was possessed by prior to coming into Latchkey's possession?
My previous owner was Baron Lum.
That's one of them, right? Yeah. And where Baron Lum acquired it?
Baron Lum made me.
What were you made from?
I was formed from 2 pieces of the shard.
What shard?
The shard.
Reason shares with you an image of a giant, like enormous piece of multifaceted, many-colored crystal falling through a star field, so through the night sky, and then eventually towards a sphere of blue and green and a little bit of white, headed towards the field of blue, and then towards a little speck of green in the field of blue, and then a tremendous roar of like an explosion and black and red, and that's the end of the image.
The shard.
Would it be fair to suggest that when Latchkey gets that image, they get sort of a sense of vertigo because they're both seeing it as projected by reason, but also sort of experience it like they're falling?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For what were you endowed the purpose of communication?
I have always been able to communicate.
What did Baron Lum ask of you?
I was Baron Lum's weapon and tool and means of identification.
Oh, we have two now. Well, that's good. Okay, I think that's all Latchy's going to ask. As far as the ritual trying to determine memories, they're going to go back up to Callista's quarters. I'm kind of assuming we all went there. It's sort of the only place to rest.
It's the friendliest area.
Yeah.
That's
Unless
certainly true.
We like dropped among the piles of shattered statue. So they're going to collect mostly everything's gone, but they're going to collect like small items, like maybe one of the pillows from the bed. They're going to pluck a hair from Sir Simeon's head while they're sleeping. They're going to use a little bit of the dust that used to be food in one of the cabinets. And they will have taken a piece of the sculpture that used to be, or had the Callista plate. So sort of set around kind of in there's only a few items, but it's sort of a circular fashion. And they're going to sit with Reason in the middle of the circle, and they're going to kind of meditate with it and see if they can, pull up particularly Callista's memories, but really any memories that they can attain or like discern that reside within the sword.
And she'll make me an Arcana roll.
31.
Okay.
Cool.
So, you get a memory of shouting and yelling and just generalized chaos. It's sort of hard to make out what's really going on at all, but eventually you're able to grasp that it's a memory of a fight, apparently inside the princess because of the coloration and the lighting and whatnot. Someone or someones are fighting Obliviax. It's fast moving enough. It's hard to sort of keep track of what's going on, but you recognize Obliviax because Obliviax is A, big and B, quite distinctive. And whoever it is memory that you're watching, they are holding Reason and wielding it as a sword. And the memory includes mental instruction, there's a verbal component, there's a visual component, there's also like a mental communication component, right? It's distinct from verbal communication. It's very clearly different. I need you to hold it in place, and then the figure the figure from whose perspective you are seeing plunges the sword into Obliviax, and that is the end of the memory.
Okay.
Then there are a whole bunch of different memories, essentially of this is going to be real jarring and hard for you to figure out. So it's going to take you a little while to process this, because it's almost nonsense to view this as a third party. But what eventually becomes apparent is that it's what you're remembering is conversations between Obliviax and Reason.
Okay.
So Reason's part is already a little bit off-putting because Reason communicates in a slightly off-putting way. But then you have to deal with the fact that Obliviax communicates in an extremely off-putting way, and does it by reappropriating the person it's communicating with memories. And so you're watching a conversation where one side of it is made up of clips of someone else's memories. In fact, another object's memories, which is probably at least a little bit harder. So they're all memories from around the Chimera project. And so you see, it's people in these white jumpsuits. You've already seen what Callista looks like. I think we established that the person, the figure who said Vegapygmies, it was sort of a shortish, swarthy man with dark salt and pepper hair and a mustache. There's a tall woman with long blonde hair and pointy ears. There's a man with a shaved head, Oridian or Sul or Oridian Sul mix man that is white, with a shaved head and a goatee. There's another fair-complected man with unwieldy white hair and a wild look in his eye. There are several different figures. Nobody you recognize from... Well, I'm sorry. Those last two, we'll come back to them. There are some figures here that maybe you can put together. The context is really weird, so it's hard to say even if you'd seen them in a different context, you would recognize them, especially because you're seeing them for like one word at a time. Right. So the whole thing is just a very unpleasant experience because it takes a lot of processing and there's a lot of confusion involved in it. But what you come away with is that over the incredibly long span of time that Reason was stuck in Obliviax more than once sort of tried to recruit Reason to let it go, basically. And Reason was very steadfast in its refusal, and there was nothing that Obliviax could say to convince it otherwise, and eventually Obliviax gave up.
Okay. Neat.
Anything else you want to do?
Not me.
Anybody else with your downtime, especially you, Josh, since Ash doesn't actually sleep?
I think my number one... Okay, so I think the biggest things I want to do are, one, I'm going to kind of wander around a little bit, maybe just seeing if there's anything obvious and interesting to kind of look at that we kind of passed by earlier. Two, probably chat with IM a little bit just to kind of get a more detailed sense of what exactly it does here and like, kind of, I guess it's day to day and any other like information only of interest to me that it might happen to have. And then three, I want to find a good place to keep the obelisk.
Okay.
So maybe just even just like a cabinet or something. My assumption is, given what we've seen here, that nobody else is going to come into the princess in the near immediate future. But I just want to kind of put it off the map a little bit so I don't have to be carrying it around everywhere. Okay,
well, let's go through those in order. In terms of sort of walking around and looking at things, I mean, you can look more at the specimen chamber. You can look more at the gallery and get whatever you might get from those. I think I've given you everything that I've specifically had in mind. But if there's other things, and you can have the benefit of having a detailed inspection of each of those places. So if something comes up in the future that's relevant, I'll certainly note that for you. Can you... There's like a spot or something, right?
Perception?
Yeah. Give me a perception roll.
Okay. Not good.
Yeah. Okay. Ash does some very cursory fiddling with the controls. Not really fiddling. Visual perusal of the controls. There are kind of complicated control schemes in both the jail, basically, and in the room where the shark normality is still sitting in hibernation mode. And basically, perusing those for a little while convinces Ash he does not understand them well enough to be confident that he can like test them in a way that won't result in something dire happening.
Right.
So there's some exploratory work there, and then deciding, you know what, I'm not going to fiddle with that, at least not on my own in the middle of while everybody else is asleep. So that was the first thing, was to just sort of generally explore. The second thing was to talk to I Am, right?
Yeah, just so I realized that I actually forgot a bonus on that, but that just puts it to 7, which I don't think makes a big difference.
It's not going to change the outcome.
Just note it.
Yeah. Talking to I Am, his brief, like his job, is purely to monitor and maintain the reactor. He's really not, it's not that he's not supposed to leave the reactor chamber, but he can't do his job when he's not in the reactor chamber. So he has spent a huge amount of time just being in that room and not really doing anything. And then out of boredom, after an amount of time that he still can't explain in a unit that's going to be useful for Ash, he went into the holding cells area and started talking with some of their occupants. And Obliviax is the most communicative and charming and sort of willing to have a conversation of the people, of the things that were in the cells. And I Am really likes riddles, it turns out. So Obliviax was a source of that, and he was entertained by that. Is there anything else you're trying to get an awareness of?
So the main thing was basically just, one, if there was something interesting or important that he did here that we didn't kind of cover. 2, if there was any like big picture item about, like he mentioned, I'm spacing out for what it was, but he mentioned which station he was created in earlier. If there was anything else like big that I should have gotten out of that, like I assume that if I want to know a lot more, I should actually go to that place. But if there's some big obvious thing that was kind of left out of that part.
I think he said, if I remember correctly, that he was created at the Archmage.
Yes.
Which is one of the other stations of the Chimera Project.
And he referred to me by a designation of some kind that I don't. Level 4.
Oh, I can give you that again if you want. He referred to Ash as a Type 4 humanoid effigy with an arcane difference engine and an elemental reservoir with a pyromantic tendency. And I think he also mentioned that all Type 4 humanoid effigies are made at the Dracolich.
How many types are there?
Well, I don't know anymore. There were 4 the last time that I knew.
Okay. And then the last thing I think I want to ask I Am about is whether... Sorry, is it an it or a he or what? I don't remember. Or they.
I think I've been inconsistent. Definitely not a they.
Okay.
I think it is fair, but I've certainly slipped into the default referring to genderless things that have person-like qualities as with male pronouns.
Okay,
so.
I'm gonna roll with it for right now then.
Sure.
So I want to know if it can bring people in from the pad on the island into the princess.
Can I Am let people into the princess?
Yes.
I do not have that permission.
Okay, I think that's about it.
Okay. And then the last thing you want to do is find a place for
the obelisk. Yep.
The obelisk. So you want to try to hide it?
It's not really like... So, like...
I'd be careful, because the other members of the Chimera can access this place, and we know they've been around. Or at least someone in one of those suits that is now associated with the Chimera Project, like 1 to 2 of them have been around.
Right, but we also know that, basically my reasoning here is, we know that people from the Chimera Project are around somewhere, but we also know that, it doesn't seem like the princess in particular has been visited by anybody in quite some time, both because of the decayed food and because of what I Am told us about how long it's been since anybody came by and offered to help him out. So my assumption there is that there isn't a lot of general purpose foot traffic. So I don't want to hide it, because I don't think that there's necessarily somewhere I can put it in here that's going to be really cleverly hidden, no matter how much time I spend on it. I don't know enough about the place, and there aren't really a lot of locations that have the qualities that you'd need to hide something this size effectively that way. I just want to put it somewhere where it's not obvious. I want to, security by obscurity it in as much as that I want it in a cabinet or something, so that if somebody walked, if somebody else happened to visit and they walked through, they would not just see it sitting out on a table somewhere. They would have to actually go into some place that it seems to me like by default, probably somebody wouldn't just always do when they happen to be in that location. My guess is that would be something in Callista's quarters, probably, because there's a lot of boring, mundane, like, storage that you put in a place where you live, so that might be a good place to hide an obelisk.
You put it behind her boring suits.
Yeah.
Were you considering dropping it in the delivery bay with the shark normality?
I do not think I want to put it in with the shark normality right now.
It'd be safe.
For a certain value of safe. Also safe from us.
So, I think you're right. The Callista's quarters are basically the only area of the princess where there's really any sort of storage space like that. I mean, there's the holding cells. That's really a different thing. And within that, I mean, the obelisk is quite large and it's kind of an unforgiving shape. So there's not a lot of places even within Callista's quarters where you could really put it out of the way and have it not be sticking out or making it just dead obvious, you know, like you could put her in her drawers, but then you couldn't put the drawers back in. So I think the only place or the best place that I can think of, to be honest with you, in the princess is under her bed.
That works. Okay, yeah, that works. Again, my assumption is both that there's probably not a lot of foot traffic through here right now, and that we're going to be using this as a de facto base of operations for at least the short, immediate future. So I just don't want to carry this thing around ever.
Great. Jeff, are you back?
I'm back.
Fantastic. So we're having our extended rest here, and that's a really good, I think we resolved what we wanted to resolve there, Josh.
Yep. I'm all set. Thank you.
So this is a great opportunity for us to discuss the dream that Sar Simeon has tonight during his extended rest.
Oh, awesome. Good.
So in this dream, Sar Simeon is in the cube, but he's alone. And it's like any of the rooms in the cube, except that it doesn't have any, like all the rooms in the cube have something in them. This is just an empty room in the cube. It's just 4 walls, a ceiling and a floor, all this kind of blank white, the same weird overhead lighting, and it's just empty. And he's standing in it and kind of looking around and looking for some kind of detail or some variation or a way out. And he turns and turns. He turns more than 360 degrees, but then finally turns again, and Callista is standing there. And she is wearing one of the Chimera jumpsuits and a crystal necklace over it.
Callista, is that you?
It's always me.
Have I finally found you? You're not going to disappear this time?
I always stay as long as I can.
So, it's an act of will on your part, then?
A tremendous will, yes.
Do you know that you've been missing for both 2 years and 27 years? I don't know how that's possible.
I have been lost for a long time, Sar Simeon.
If you can tell me where you are, I can find you.
If I could tell you where I was, I wouldn't have to ask you to find me.
How did you exit the princess?
The same way anyone does. Through the transportation chamber.
Where did you go next?
We were going to go to the Archmage. That was the first one we built. So we were going to make our last stand there.
Last stand against what?
The traitors.
The traitors of the Chimera Project?
Yes.
And who was we?
The rest of the project. The ones of us who survived, at least.
The fair cards, the foul cards?
The fair and the foul has no relationship to the value of a person. They were just names on cards, pictures.
Was Org? I mean, I'm guessing there were two teams then. People who were trying to preserve the project and people who were trying to destroy the project.
It was the last expedition. They weren't the same when they came back. We shouldn't have sent them there. Or at least we shouldn't have let them go.
Who was it that left? Or who went? Sorry, I'm very used to talking to the princess. My apologies.
It was the last expedition to the Looking Glass constellation. That's where everything went wrong. And that's the end of the dream.
Okay. Do I wake up like in the morning, or do I wake up with everybody else, or
like a little before everybody else?
Okay. Oh. Princess? Can you whisper?
That's an interesting question. Can the princess whisper? I think I can.
Was that really loud, or was that?
It was like a really loud whisper.
All right. Well, never mind then. I'm going to take out my own personal journal, and I'm going to put the details of the dream in the journal. And then I'm going to see if I can, like, with the rest of my time while I'm waiting for people to wake up, I'm going to take out Callista's and see if I can figure out how to write in it myself. Nothing I take, like, too terribly seriously. I'm not trying to actively, like, expend all my mental energy on it, but it's just more like playing with buttons or playing with commands or playing with stuff to try and get into it.
So you figured out how to unlock it, and the scrolling thing is pretty intuitive once you get the rules in place. There are no other buttons that you can discern, and no other verbal commands, at least that are obvious, like saying write or record or synonyms for that.
Okay.
It doesn't have any particular results. So you do seem to be able to navigate it, but adding things to it either has some approach that is really counterintuitive or requires something you don't have.
Okay. Fair. Well, then once everybody wakes up, I'm not going to wake them up prematurely. I'll share with them the contents of the dream, what I asked, the kind of answers that I got, and the terrifying things that I heard.
Okay. So now you said you wanted to go to the transportation chamber and see about looking at the outside.
That's it this week for the Chimera. Our theme music is Hoof, Heart, and Hiss by Matt Weber. You can find a link to more of Matt's work and any other music used in this episode in the show notes. You can also find us online at thechimera.space or on Twitter and Facebook at ChimeraPod. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or just telling your friends. Join us back here in 2 weeks for the next episode, and thanks for listening.
Up to the top left-hand side of the map, you will see that going south through that exit took you back to the transportation chamber.
No way. Sorry. Having problems. I'm gonna have to let that run.
Oh, man. I just like the thought that that's what's playing in the transportation chamber when we walk in.
Merry-go-round broke down.
Congratulations! You killed Obliviax.